Today, I'm going to show you what might be one of the easiest ways to make sourdough hot dog buns. They're golden brown on the outside, soft and fluffy on the inside, perfect for loading up with a standard hot dog or a brat. And unlike store-bought hot dog buns, these actually taste like something. To make these, start out with a mixing bowl and add 200 grams of water, and then 50 grams of whole milk. You could use a lower fat milk or a non-dairy milk if you wanted to. There's such a small amount of milk in the recipe that the difference won't be that noticeable. Next, add 10 grams of white sugar, and then 10 grams of salt, also white. Next, get out your active and risen sourdough starter. You'll need 100 grams of sourdough starter for this dough. To feed my starter, I started the night before. I took out 25 grams of sourdough starter from the fridge, fed it 50 grams of water, mixed it around a little bit, and then added 50 grams of bread flour. I mixed all of that together, added the lid and the rubber band. Then I let the starter rise at room temperature overnight for about 8 hours until it had doubled in size and it was ready to use in my dough. So add 100 grams of the risen and active sourdough starter to your mixing bowl. Then take whatever starter is left over in the jar and put that back into the fridge for the next time you want to bake sourdough. After the starter, add 2 tablespoons or roughly 25 grams of melted butter. For a non-butter option, you could use olive oil or a neutral tasting oil, but butter tastes the best. Now mix up the wet ingredients for about a minute or so, mostly to break up the starter and to start dissolving the salt and sugar. Then weigh out 450 grams of bread flour and add it directly to the mixing bowl. And just for your reference, I used King Arthur bread flour for this recipe. This is a very thick dough, so bring it together with a spoon until it becomes difficult to stir. The dough will stay kind of dry and floury just by stirring it like this, but once it becomes harder to stir the dough, you'll know it's ready to knead. So flip the dough out of the mixing bowl and onto an unfloured surface on your kitchen counter, and knead the dough by hand for 8 minutes. I find that 8 minutes is about the right amount of time to knead this dough to take it from a shaggy and dry clump of dough to a smooth and fully developed ball of dough, like this. Once you've fully kneaded your dough, it's time for the first rise or the bulk fermentation. I like to move my dough to a 7-cup glass bowl with a lid. This one I've greased with a little bit of butter just so the dough doesn't stick to it. Move your dough to whatever mixing bowl or glass bowl you're using for the first rise, cover it up with a lid, and then let it rise at room temperature for about 4 to 8 hours or until it's doubled in size. Your dough could double in size faster or slower depending on the temperature of your kitchen. It took my dough just about 5.5 hours to double in size on this particular day. At that point, it had doubled in size, it was puffy, and it was ready to shape. For the dividing and shaping process, remove your dough from the glass bowl and place it down onto the unfloured kitchen counter. Using the palms of your hands and your fingertips, flatten the dough and shape it into a rough square shape. A square shape is ideal here so that you can equally slice up and divide your dough into rectangular pieces. Speaking of which, take a chef's knife or a bench scraper and divide your dough into 8 equally sized pieces. If you want to weigh these out using a digital scale, they should be roughly 100 to 105 grams each. But I'm just eyeballing it here and dividing my dough with a bench scraper. Now you're going to shape each of these pieces of dough into a tubular hot dog shape. Pick one up and flip it over so the sticky side is facing up. Then stretch out the edges of the dough if the dough isn't perfectly rectangular. Then starting on the longer end of the dough that's furthest away from you, roll the dough into itself, basically like you're rolling it up into a tube shape. And then once you reach the end, pinch the seam of the dough closed, like this. Then once you've pinched the seam closed, you have a rough hot dog or tube shape of dough with a seam on top. Flip it over so that the seam is facing down against the counter. Then using your hands, rock the dough back and forth against the counter to smooth out that seam and to make the tube of dough a little bit longer. You're going for a total final length of about 6 inches, which is the length of the average hot dog. Once you've confirmed that your hot dog bun dough is the right length, put it back with the rest and shape up all of the other pieces of dough. This shaping process does take a little bit of time, but it's fairly straightforward, easy, and forgiving. Once your buns are shaped, get a 9x13 metal cake pan and line it with a sheet of parchment paper. Then arrange the hot dog bun doughs in 2 columns of 4 hot dog buns each, and at this point they shouldn't be touching each other. As the doughs rise up during the final proof and as they bake, they will bump into each other and touch, but at this point they should still be separated. When your hot dog buns are arranged on the pan, it's time for the final proof. So cover up the pan of dough with a damp kitchen towel or a sheet of plastic wrap. Either of these options is going to keep the moisture in the dough and keep them from drying out during the second rise. Now that your doughs are covered, let them rise at room temperature for about 2 to 4 hours or until doubled in size. Then, about 30 minutes before your doughs are done proofing, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and make sure to have a metal cake pan or some kind of metal tray on the lower rack of your oven to use as a steam tray. After about 2.5 hours of proofing, my sourdough hot dog bun doughs were done proofing, they were doubled in size, puffy, and ready to bake. For one final touch before baking, this is optional but recommended. Take one medium egg, scramble it up, and then brush that on top of each of your doughs as an egg wash. That's going to give a golden brown sheen to each of the hot dog buns as they bake. You can skip this step if you don't want to use any egg, but I highly recommend it as it'll help your hot dog buns turn out a little extra brown and shinier. Now that your hot dog buns are brushed with the egg wash, it's time to move them into your preheated oven. Place the metal pan into the center rack of your oven, and then to add a little extra steam to the oven, pull out that metal pan and fill it with 1 cup of boiling water. I used an electric kettle for this. The steaming water will in general help the hot dog buns rise up to their full potential during the first half of the baking time. Now that your oven is loaded up, close the oven and let the hot dog buns bake for 15 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. After 15 minutes of initial baking time, your hot dog buns will still be pale. They're not fully baked yet, but you'll want to remove that steam tray just to get it out of there. You don't need it for the second half of baking. Now close the oven and continue baking for another 15 to 20 minutes until the hot dog buns achieve a perfect golden brown color that you're looking for. This is what my bread looked like after an additional 20 minutes of baking, and I liked the color that I saw, so I knew it was time to pull them out. Remove your hot dog buns from the oven and carefully transfer them any way that you can onto a cooling rack. I think it's best to slice these up and serve them with hot dogs once these buns are fully cooled, so let them cool for about 20 to 30 minutes at minimum. Then it's time for the taste test. As you can see, these hot dog buns have baked up into each other, giving them that pull-apart dinner roll effect, which I really like for hot dog and hamburger buns. To me, these buns have the perfect golden brown tops, soft white edges, and the bottoms are nice and toasty brown as well. That'll provide some nice textural contrast between the soft sides and the crunchier tops and bottoms. Now, some crazy people like to slice their hot dogs this direction, but I like to go over here on the soft side. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer and why. Like I said before, I think these hot dog buns have a beautiful golden brown exterior, and they're also extremely soft and fluffy in the middle. Just look at this. A delicious homemade sourdough hot dog bun with a nice closed crumb interior. Excuse me while I grab a jumbo hot dog with mustard. No matter what condiments you put on your hot dog, this hot dog bun is going to be the perfect pair for whatever you're putting on your hot dog. It's not going to distract from the toppings, not going to distract from the hot dog, but it is an elevated, traditional, classic hot dog bun. The sourdough starter doesn't give the hot dog bun a sour or any kind of weird flavor at all. It just makes this a flavorful hot dog bun that actually tastes like something. Because we're using a good, high-quality sourdough bread dough as the base for these hot dog buns, the buns actually taste good on their own. They're not just some light, airy vehicle for transporting a hot dog into your mouth. If you already know how to make sourdough bread and you've got a cookout coming up, I think this recipe is for you.